Hello and welcome back to YellowCard Cram School. As always, this video is sponsored by Strictly Broken TCG, more about them at the end. So on today's Cram School, we're going to be covering a fundamental topic that's relevant to all card games, but we're just going to talk about it in the sense of Vanguard for today. And I'll be honest, like most other Cram Schools, I got the idea for this video from various other discussions I've been having on Discord and Twitter over the last few days. So here's me, presenting it in a much more easy to digest format that will hopefully be able to cover a lot more people and reach a lot more people a lot more easily. And so the topic we're talking about today is card evaluation, specifically determining whether or not a card is good or bad, and whether or not it belongs in your deck. Now, before we get started today, I want to refer you to an old video that Tony made on this channel called Respecting the WinCon, which you can find either up here or down in the description below. It's a little bit out of date because it refers to a lot of old G-series concepts and examples, and that's mainly because the video was made before the reboot. However, the core concept and principle explained in that video is still very relevant, especially for this video, so I highly advise you to check that out if you haven't already. But if you do already know what's going on there, then that makes it easier, we'll just move straight on. So when talking about whether or not a card is good or bad, you need to talk about it with respect to the deck's WinCon and what the deck is trying to do. Obviously there are very strong effects like Pot of Greed, anything that just draws lots of cards or anything that just aggressively pluses to the board is generically good, and it's obviously good. But then how good it is and whether or not you should be playing it is determined by how it factors into what your deck is trying to do. Very commonly what I see a lot of people do is that they take a bunch of cards, they look at it, they see that the effect is good, and then they just shove it into the deck without thinking about how it fits into the deck. And then they end up with a pile of cards and a pile of effects, and they try to win the game from there. And that's entirely backwards. What you need to be doing is taking your WinCon, seeing how do you get there, and then working backwards from that, knowing that to win I need to do this. To do that I need to do X, Y, and Z. To do X, Y, and Z I need to have A, B, and C. And so finding the cards with A, B, and C is how you determine whether or not that card belongs in your deck. Of course, there's a lot more depth to that, but this is like the very basic level that a lot of people fail to understand, and they end up missing, which is why their decks are sometimes not as efficient as they think they should be. And of course, different decks with different WinCons require different effects. Without wanting to give specific examples, because I don't want to call anyone out based on what I've discussed, but it makes sense that different decks with different WinCons require different effects, and so cards should be evaluated differently in those contexts. So for example, a slow, grindy deck that tries to win the game over multiple turns by out-advantaging the opponent isn't going to have much use for Guard Restrict, because by the time that deck tries to win the game, the opponent should already have basically not that many cards to guard with, because you've been squeezing them of resources every turn. Compared to, say, a much more aggressive, faster deck that tries to kill in one turn with a very big combo, a very big attack, that would very much like to have Guard Restrict, because your opponent still has all their pieces in hand, you haven't done much to whittle away at their defenses, but you need to just swing with that massive battering ram and win the game. And it's understanding, what deck needs what, is why it's such a big factor in determining whether or not a card is good in that context. There's a lot of other deeper things to factor and consider as well, like for example, just saying that this card is good in this situation isn't enough. Like sure, that's base level evaluation. You determine that this card is useful in this situation, and that card is useful in that situation, this card is not useful in this situation, whatever. But then you need to think deeper beyond that. You need to think, how often does that situation come up? And then in that situation, how good is that card? And then is that a good situation or a bad situation? Do you want to be in that situation? Like, if the deck is in that situation, what does that mean? Like, if it's a card that's only good when you're winning versus a card that's only good when you're losing, maybe it might not actually be as good as you think, because if you're already winning, then you shouldn't need that card, and if you're losing, then does that card stop you from losing? You have to think about how the card also functions outside of that situation. There's a lot of talks about, oh, this is a brick, that's a brick. But is it actually a brick? Like in Vanguard, cards can always be used as shield, or you can always just call them to rearguard to either attack or boost, even if they're not the best choice in that situation. So you have to think about, does this card reach its full potential enough of the time? And if not, does it reach good enough of the time? And of course, everything discussed here so far is entirely relevant on experience and game knowledge, and obviously only comes with time, but it's something that you can definitely hone and practice and develop by thinking about this repeatedly. Think to yourself, okay, this deck is trying to do this, so I need to do this, so this card is good because that. Or, this deck is trying to do this, but I'm going to play this card because that can happen, which stops me from doing this. I'm trying to keep it very vague, which can be a little bit confusing, I understand. But you have to understand, it's kind of illustrating that, it's not just a single track of, this card is good, I play this card. It's, this card is good, but, or this card is bad, but, or my deck is trying to do this, but. And it's about balancing, the various things that can come up and how good the card is in each of those situations. There's also the additional case of space, right? So Vanguard is, like with every other game, follows deck building rules. And I would say it actually follows more deck building rules than other games, because not only do you have to balance triggers and grade ratios, you also have to balance effects like, say, Sentinels if you want to play those. You can only play so many of this card, you can only play so many of that card, there's restriction lists in place. And of course, sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes it's not. Like, for example, if you want to play a deck that has lots and lots of grade 1s for whatever reason, that means you have to play less grade 2s and less grade 3s. So you have less grade 2s and grade 3s to work with, so the grade 2s and grade 3s that you do play really have to carry their weight, because why are you playing them over another grade 2 that might be better when you only have limited space? And again, you have to look back at the context of the deck. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? Is this role fulfilled by another card in the deck? If so, do you need to have this effect multiple times? Is it that critical to your game plan? And again, this is all things that, just one of many things that you have to consider, and you have to really, dig deep into a lot of this for a lot of different decks. Like, for example, the deck building decision about whether or not to play Sentinels can vary depending on your meta, depending on what your deck does, how quickly you can go through the deck, and the situations that come up with Sentinels might be good. I'm talking about draw PGs versus crit Sentinels here, by the way, not, should you play Sentinels, because the answer is pretty much always yes. It's multiple factors to consider, and each of them do work off of each other. Like, if this card is bad, but I need it for this situation, what if you can play a card that stops you from getting to that situation in the first place? Obviously, you can't stop things like having to G-assist or getting double crit on turn 2 or whatever. But if you're playing a card for this reason, rather than just thinking about what other card can I play for that reason, think about why am I playing for that reason, and then you might find that a lot of your other slots become different or open up, and then you evaluate different cards and becomes, oh wait, if I'm now playing to this other thing instead, this other card now becomes way better. So you can see there, as it evolves and as it grows, there's a lot of depth and complexity to this field. This video is a lot shorter than I wanted it to be, and it's a lot more vague than the other Cram schools. But hopefully, just by me mentioning some of these things you need to consider and how to approach card evaluation, hopefully from here on, anyone watching should hopefully improve their little bit themselves. And as always, I really hope that this helps someone. If you do want have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments, get in touch with us in any way, shape or form. More than happy to help and give you another rundown, explain a bit more about what I'm saying. It's going to be a short episode from me today. Cram School is usually a bit longer and a bit more involved, but this is just a really quick topic I just want to fire out there, just to get out of the way, because I feel that it's probably going to be helpful for at least someone, is what I'm hoping. But yeah, that's going to be it for me today. As always, thank you to Strictly Broken TCG for sponsoring this video. You can use the discount code SBTCGYellowCard at checkout for a 7% discount on your playsets and playset pre-orders. Other than that, I've been Zistral with YellowCard Vanguard. Thank you very much for watching this video. Give it a like if you've liked it. If not, no worries. Feel free to subscribe to our channel if you want to see more. Follow us on all the links down below in the description. Keep up with what we're doing. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye bye.